Okay, so we're recording. So welcome everybody. Welcome, Michael. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for being here. It is an honor to have you on this podcast as my first invited guest. I'm super honored that you wanted to do this interview and to introduce you to my audience. And so for those of you who don't know, Michael Mirdad is a worldwide known author, best-selling author, spiritual teacher, and healer. One of the things that called me most to his work is the way that he explains his teachings in a way that is very grounding and that people can actually make sense of very complicated spiritual knowledge and bring it home, bring it to a place where they can actually do something with it. So that's one of the things that I really love and enjoy and admire about Michael. And he's also currently working from Sedona. That's where his base is. But he's traveling the world usually. Yes. So Michael, this is a show where we wanted to just have a casual conversation and get to know you more. There's this like view of the healers and of the spiritual teachers that sometimes they seem to be like very out there, and how did they even come to be in that state? Or, you know, we see them as, oh my God, they're enlightened, they're so far away. But I wanted to do this interview with you to kind of get to know you, the human self, the divine self, and also to know that eventually, or actually, we are both, right? We have our human life and we also have our divine life, and how these two interplay. So I'm very curious to know from your early years, how did you, how was your relationship to God? How did you start, let's say, did you have like an awakening process, or was it something that was always within you? How did you live during those first years in your life?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because I believe that most people find the spiritual path in one of a few ways. Some of us have like spiritual epiphanies, like just a meditation, a Kundalini awakening, something just out of the blue. Wow. And that's how we get on the path. For other people, it's the opposite, like it's dramatic, like a near-death experience, going through the dark night of the soul, the loss of a loved one, you know, something that really tears us up. Divorce is a common one that sets a lot of people on the path. The third category is really people that have always felt that. No category is better than another because it doesn't matter. It's like the John Lennon song, whatever gets you to the light is all right. So I just happen to be one of the people that always felt that. You know, yes, you know, it'd be great to say I was a normal person and suddenly the light of God shone from the heavens and transformed me and gave me angel wings. You know, we would love to have those wonderful dramatic stories. Mine was always fairly even keel. I just always had an interest. When I say always, things would leak out of my mouth in terms of words spontaneously, the way children do sometimes, that revealed that something was there always. But as far as cognitively becoming more and more aware of curiosity, of spirituality, grade school is the earliest I remember that any shows on TV that were, and there were very few back in those days, you know, the 60s and the 70s, very few shows about UFOs or ghosts or Bigfoot, but anything like that always intrigued me. And the more those became more, you know, prevalent or available, the more I just devoured it. I ate it up. And by 1980, I was out of school by, you know, a couple of years by then and all that. And so by 1980, there was this feeling of going to metaphysical stores. There were only a few, but I went and started going, wow, you know, there's these even classes, just, you know, people had classes, 4, 5, 6 people in them, but they called them classes, workshops. There were only a few people in those days interested, but I was like, oh my God, when's the next one? You know, I loved it. I loved it wasn't just the learning of spiritual topics, but I loved being around people that shared the same interest of God, love, spirituality.
Hmm. Did your family have like the similar interests, or was it completely different? In my
No, my
experience, it was
family,
like the opposite.
yeah, the one side, like my mother and so on, no interest, just no interest in any of that. She wasn't anti-spirituality, just not interested in really anything in life. I mean, she was really a kind of blank in that way. My dad had a curiosity. He would he had friends, and the few of them that they had an interest every so often go to a psychic. You know, back in the 60s, they would go to the most popular psychics of the time. They had a little bit of an intrigue, but he was still no to other things, you know. He had a few books on Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus on his bookshelf, but most of his books were not spiritual. But I would go and sneak in his room, found one, read it, found another, you know, and I would read whatever he did have. And because I didn't have a job or money as a kid, but eventually I would find where to get more of those kinds of books. But no, they weren't really interested in this. They were sort of traditional. There's two kinds of traditional families when it comes to religion. One that actually does go to church, burn candles, follow ceremonies, and the other where they don't. They just call themselves Catholic or whatever their tradition, religion might be, and they don't really participate. Mine was they called themselves Catholic and they didn't really ever go to church or participate, but they made us.
Mine was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was exactly the same. But my parents were like, of course, they never went to church, nothing. And I remember I wanted to go to be with God. So I would tell them like, can I go with my friend, you know, or I would make them drive me to my neighbor because she did go to church. And I
Wow.
love to have that experience, you know. I always felt so close to God and just being there. And my parents were like, what's wrong with her? Like, what did
Right.
we do?
God, that's beautiful that you felt that
Yeah.
calling all along.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so how did you start, like, you too, like when you started to go and find more people that had the same interest or the knowledge, was there like a moment where you started to um, kind of know and intuitively know that you were going to teach, or how did the teaching develop, or that,
Well,
of
it was
course, you
all a
know.
very organic process. I really organically loved spirituality, but then also I attended some of these classes here and there. And at some point, there was a pivotal moment where the teacher didn't show up. They were sick. So we were all sitting there going, what are we going to do? And someone said, well, Michael, you seem to know things intuitively. Why don't you just talk and share with us, be the teacher today? And I did. And that was the end right there. That was, it all just changed. And then I soon after that, I was doing Sunday services now and then for various New Thought churches. And I was probably only maybe 20 at the time, but do New Thought churches, you know, and then I very soon after, you know, I taught workshops. The first workshops I taught were more about healing. I did things about crystals and stones, and I did a workshop on holistic health and natural remedies. So those were my first workshops ever, probably at around 20 years old.
Wow. And how did you feel about teaching? Like, because I know there's a moment where it's like, I remember reading one of my spiritual teachers, and he said, like, if there's anything that you master, no matter what it is, teach it. Like, if you really, really, really want to master something, teach it, and then you will master it, right?
True.
But I remember the first time that I did that, it was like I had to step into a different, perhaps like a part of me that was more in that light, in that innocence, in that purity,
yeah.
forget a little bit about my human self, let's say. How did you feel about that?
Again, it was very easy, very, very organic. To teach just felt like I had always done it. But it's also true that some people can teach from their head, and they can even be good teachers teaching from their head. But to be a great teacher, you have to integrate what you're teaching. It has to come from your heart, with your mind too, but it has to come from not something I'm doing, it's something I'm being. And the more a person wants to launch into being a teacher, I don't care what kind, Reiki, metaphysics, or any topic, the more you really want to become that thing, the more the topic itself and the universe itself will test you to see if you've become the actual teacher of, not the lecturer about, but the teacher of. Are you like maestro? Are you the master of that topic? Did you get it? You know, so if you don't want to be tested that much to get to that place of becoming, then a person should lay low, only teach from their head, or don't teach at all, and then you're much safer.
Oh God, yeah. I always describe spiritual path, but also just this path of integration, embodiment. For me, it's a lot like, the hero's journey. It has so much of that, like crazy things that happen also when we start to really dive into our own healing process, and the things that come up, the demons and the monsters and the shadow. I remember one of the things that that happened to me was after I had an experience of like reawakening after meditating and going to a spiritual course. I kind of like received all my intuition back in that moment. And a couple of days later, I had a very scary experience with like this, just like, let's say, like an energy that was lingering somewhere there, but it scared me so much. And I remember saying, that's it, I'm not doing this. I opened like, the Pandora box, and now there's all sorts of things flying around. And I remember one of my teachers saying, well, you have two options. Like either you go through it and you get to the other side, or if you want, you can try to go back asleep, like try to go back, but it's not going to work. And of course, my soul was like, okay, we have to go through it. Right. And it was a period of, what I call purification, or just really facing those things that are there. Did you ever have an experience like that where you were like, no, I'm just going to like,
I call it the dark night of the soul. When it's in a big form. I don't mean just like a bad weekend or a challenging weekend. I mean when we really go through the deep dark shadow of life. It's called the dark night of the soul. Classically, that's the name given in the Middle Ages. A phrase most coined by St. John of the Cross. So here he was dedicating himself to a new level of consciousness, not religion, but spiritual consciousness. What did I say a few minutes ago? If you're going to claim to go to a higher level, be prepared to be tested at that level. So mystics like St. Teresa, St. John of the Cross, they went through these deep purifications, physical, emotional, financial, intellectual, just purgings. And so it's called the dark night of the soul. And everybody goes through that at least once, if not more times. Some people have what I call a dark life of the soul. Like they've come into this life to clear everything, and they go through, oh my God, constant barrage of, challenge and hurt and so on. God bless them, because it's no easy thing to accomplish. But I do know that one of the affirmations to use when you go through the dark night of the soul is this too shall pass. Meaning, my goal is not in this life or any, my goal is not the dark night. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. So everybody is or will go through the dark night of the soul. And one more thing, So yes, I've gone through that a couple of times, maybe 3 times in my lifetime, the dark night of the soul. Always remember that it lasts usually for at least a couple of years, not a couple of days or weeks or months, a couple of years. It doesn't mean the whole time is horrendous, but there will be a time, and you know you're in the dark night, not when 1 or 2 things in your life are challenged, but when many. The symptoms are many things going challenging at the same time. They last more than months, then you know it's the dark night. And also one more symptom that you're in the dark night is, and everything you try fails. Because you're not supposed to be trying to move forward. You're supposed to be processing where you are. So those are the 3 main symptoms, and I've taught and lectured. There's free lectures I have on my website about the dark night of the soul. I've written a book on the topic. But really, one of the things about it is that there's a way out. There's hope. People must be reminded, not only for themselves that there's hope, but remind other people when you see them going through the dark night that there's hope. But there's not only a personal, there's planetary. Sometimes like those are the 2 extremes. There's personal, and then in between personal and planetary. Family can go through a dark night. A group of colleagues can go through a dark night. A town, a city, a nation, a country, a continent, and even a whole planet can go through a dark night. And humanity have been going through the dark night of the soul in 2020. And if you know what it is, it's easier to make it through, because you realize, focus on the light at the end of the tunnel, but don't only focus and then process where you are. Focus where you're going and process where you are. Focus where you're going and process where you are. That's the trick.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest things to teach, because I have many students that are going through that process, and even just like the process of healing, and they will ask me like repeatedly, like, when am I going to come outside? Like, when am I going to reach the end of the tunnel? Like, when am I like healing enough? And I remember I was also like, I think my dark night of the soul was like 8 to 10 years. And that was like this ongoing like roller coaster of things just vanishing, everything just being completely thrown. And I was actually in Berlin during that time. So I was in Germany, and all my life was, if I see it now, I really feel like it was like a reverberation of like the Middle Ages, because that's how it felt. Like, that's the darkness that was there. I didn't feel like this modern person in modern society. No, I felt like I was going through like torture, basically, and all of these imprints that were there. So that's
why they were called the Dark
Ages. Yes. And how do you feel about that everybody's calling this moment kind of like the new Renaissance, or this like the dawn of the new age, or the new light? Or have you been experiencing that too, like this influx?
Well, I know that some people are thinking of things like right now in the world as a sort of a reset button, a rebooting, we're going to enter a renaissance. And no, that's not happening yet. People haven't even finished getting through the dark night, let alone the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just aware of what's really happening. So there'll be some light points here and there, but religion, medicine, science, politics, they're all still too deceptive to people. So there can't be a renaissance while there's that much deception. And so more of these old systems have to transform, be purged, or even die the way they once were before they can reach a new life called a renaissance. So we will have a mini renaissance in the near future or down the road, but we're not even done with the dark night yet.
Of course. Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, to my students, or what I always tell, like, there's like a part of us that needs to be okay with where we're at right now, like really learning to be here, but at the same time, like you were saying, not to lose sight of where we're going and
Right.
doing both things. And sometimes they're like, well, that's contradictory. Like, how can I be here, but also focusing there? Like, how can I do these two things? And that's for me where I also all the things I think in my spiritual journey, like there's always this contradiction, but that doesn't mean that it cannot coexist, because people
Right.
are always looking at everything through, light and dark polarity. So if it's one or the other, but if we go into the multidimensionality, which is where I see kind of like the light shining into, the consciousness that we are becoming as human beings, that we're being conscious for the first time that, oh, wait a minute, there's a little bit more than these dimensions, or a lot more, right?
Right.
So when we have that concept, then we just don't just have these two directions, but we have all directions and
Yeah.
all of this, right? So
Right.
how do you see that part, like the multidimensionality of being, and how can we integrate that? Because I know it also generates a lot of confusion, and people start to go with the colors, and with the labels,
Right.
and with, I'm this and I come from I don't know where. But really, like, that's not, for me, that's not the point of knowing these things.
Right.
So how do you think
Well,
we can start to integrate?
yeah, you said it really well, that last sentence. The goal is God. The goal is not to develop just multidimensional or psychic skills or healing skills. Our goal is oneness with God. And in the oneness with God, eventually, that we will all reach, there's no need for healing, counseling, crystals, organic foods, just absolute total bliss, love, oneness, joy. It's beautiful experience, right? That's the goal. Now, until you get there, then all the colors and the things that we do, the healing, go ahead and get a massage. Go ahead and do rebirthing breath work. Go ahead and do yoga. Go ahead and practice forgiveness while we're on the path. So there's a spiritual path, but some people will say there's a spiritual path or a healing path, and they'll say, and it never ends. It's constant. No, that's not true. It's constantly evolving. No, it's not true. There's a goal. You're not just forever on the path. The path is only there because we're remembering who we are. So when they say the path, a spiritual or healing path, is eternal, the healing path is like peeling an onion and it never ends. That's not true. Have you ever peeled an onion? You do eventually not have layers to peel anymore. So why do they use that analogy when it's so inaccurate? If it doesn't end up proving what they're trying to say. You do get to a goal. And in life and in spirituality, there's a path, but the path is only there because we went from knowing who we are in God, and then we went in a circle, kind of like at some point we're up in heaven, and then we seemingly seem to have fallen into the third dimension, the universe. We grow, but we come home. You don't just grow and take off somewhere. Even Einstein explained, if you follow a beam of light far enough into the universe, somehow you will end up back to where you started. Well, if I follow it straight, how can I end up in a circle? Even physics, quantum physics, understands that it's an illusion, and even the universe will bend you back to where you started because you can't escape your original divinity. So you think you went on a journey, but it's a journey without distance to a place you never left. And so this thing we call the spiritual path is something some of us are conscious of and some of us are not. But everybody, even the most twisted person, is on the spiritual path. How do we know that? Because everybody has a spirit in them. Therefore, every path they walk is a spiritual path by default. Well, what do you mean? Like mass murderers and megalomaniac, rulers of countries? Yes, I'm not saying they're spiritual behaving, but they're on a path. And all paths lead the easy way or the hard way to the same place. The easy way would look like this, and I'm home. The hard way would look like this. So it doesn't matter if you're Adolf Hitler. You just have a wider birth to go through, a wider peripheral, view of the universe experience. And you're going to have challenging karmic stuff that comes back on you. But the universe still bids you to come home. So we're all called to return to oneness, to love. But some of us are rebellious, hurtful, and hateful. So it takes longer to get there.
Yes. I always say that like the light always calls you home. And it doesn't matter like who you are, where you are, what you've done. Because, there's so many people, and even in the spiritual community, that they're like, oh, let's pray for the light, and let's do something other to the darkness, right? Or let's not pray for the darkness. And for me, it's like, we need to pray for everyone, because there's no differentiation between darkness and light, only here. But if we go a little bit above that, we're only talking about light on light. We're only talking about love. We're only talking about God, which is in everything and everyone. And
yeah,
so
exactly. And the second part of the point you made was earlier when you asked that question was, that it's about balance. It's about knowing the truth, but respecting the illusion. So you don't make becoming a psychic your goal. You make returning to God your goal. But on your way, enjoy and live in balance. Have a balanced lifestyle. Take care of your health as well as your psychic self. Get emotional work done as well as intellectual work. Let all of this be like tools on your tool belt. Let all of this be facets in your life as a complete pie, slices of the pie. So yeah, developing a bit of this and developing a bit of that. And yes, some of it's going to be exciting. It's a little more exciting to learn how to do intuitive readings than it is for some people. That's more exciting than it is to learn math and how to do your bookkeeping in your checkbook. Some things are more fun, more exciting, more colorful, more musical, more creative, more free-flowing. But we still want balance, because we don't want to become what we call bliss bunnies. These people that are just spaced out and, oh, I'm in God all the time and I'm floating out here. And they can't balance their checkbook. They're always broke. They can't get it together with relationships. See, that's not balance. That's not actually true happiness. They're stimulated. They think they're happy because it's a form of stimulated happiness, but not deep, authentic, and complete happiness, where their bank account and their health and their relationships and their creativity, all chakras, all aspects of life, complete and experienced and beautiful. That's what we can have while we're here.
yes, that's so great to hear you say that, because we do have a lot of because spirituality and the way that it's being taught and the way it has been changing for so many people, it's so new in a way, and they come and they're like, okay, well, now I'm just going to do this, and I always say that there are like stages in your journey, and your own soul will take you through the lessons that you need to learn to evolve, but we're evolving as a whole, like you said. I remember when I started in my spiritual journey, one of my teachers, he was a shaman from Mexico, and he was always very serious, and he just like said a few words to me, nothing more. And he said, you need to learn how to master business. And I was like an art student in Berlin. I was, I didn't even have heating. I was like, of course I was healing people. I was also not charging absolutely anything. I was just serving my years of service. He was like, you need to charge first, and and you need to become a master of business, of what business is. Wow. And I didn't understand that until I think 2 or 3 years later, when I was hit with so many things that I was like, okay, I get it now why he was saying that.
Right.
before.
Essentially, you were demonstrating in your life that your heart chakra was open. Healing, service, love. But your teacher said you need root chakra, grounding, accounting, intellectual chakra, root chakra. You need to get earthed more, grounded more. That's right. Brilliant.
Yeah. Yes. And I was also having a lot of experiences and psychically and everything, but this is coming to, tying up to another question that I had. I get asked so many times, like, how did you develop your intuitive gifts, your clairvoyance? Like, so many people, they go into the spiritual world and they're like, I want to open up my pineal and open my chakras. And I was laughing because I heard you in one of your talks saying, like, if you blast all of your chakras open, you're going to, have something, an attack or something. And that's something that I also have always taught, that, people speak metaphorically, but then people take it as a reality, but it's not. Like, the way things open or the way things come, for me, it's something that is a very, very organic process, and that it happens when the quality is there, when the field is like, the fruit is ripe, let's say, and when you're prepared to actually receive those gifts or those things without going crazy. For me, when I received it, because it was fast, I was like, I'm not sure, like, I had to learn, and I went to a lot of healing and learned so many things that were part of my path, but just to try to control and not be tapped into everything all the time, because I felt exhausted. So people also tend to romanticize that part. And I always say, if you have a gift, you also have that responsibility. So make
Right.
sure that you're ready for the responsibility before you even ask for the gift, right? Like a
Right.
puppy, you need to be there. How is that for you? Like, what do you say to people when they, or to anyone who is like, oh, I want to open my gifts? Like, the thing that I always say is to start, being that light, and being that love, and you know, being an instrument of that light. And then you will eventually, be awakened in many other aspects by that light, but you have to hold that light first.
Yeah, it's one thing I tell people. First of all, be careful what you ask for. Because again,
Yes.
if you want to become a great healer, now again, you can be a good healer and not apply anything in your own life. You can be a good psychic and be a complete hypocrite. You can be somewhat accurate. I've been teaching and working a long time, longer than most people that are in the world of spirituality and healing. And I've met, like, pretty much most or all of the big name authors, teachers, and whatever. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in it. But what I did with people is to tell people, students on the path, if you like an author, don't expect them to be a spiritual teacher. They didn't tell you that they were. They might sometimes say that or pretend to be. Just let them be an author. Why? Because if you have an author, it doesn't mean, if you're an author, it doesn't mean you have to live up to the standards of a spiritual teacher. But be careful. If you're going to hold this name, this title, you better be careful, because the whole universe is watching and saying, oh, really? Let's see. Let's see how spiritual you are. And before you know it, that person runs with their tail between their legs, because it's like, oh, I guess I'm just an author. That's right. Stop claiming to be more than you're willing to be. Now, on the flip side, I have chosen to be this thing, spiritual teacher, healer, counselor, for 40 years. And it's not always been easy, because nobody said this. Nobody taught this. I'm the first person I ever heard say this. And so I'm having to take my own advice and go, Michael, remember, if you're going to live this way and claim to be this, you better be prepared. And so I many years ago, I knew to tell people, don't ask me on a date. If you're a friend, my priority is always teaching. Don't ask me on a date because I'm interested in teaching. That doesn't mean I never have an intimate relationship or a friendship, but my priority always is the work, being of service and doing the work. And it's true. I mean, and I have had to live that. And that means sometimes, you feel alone. So it's very simple. When you start to feel alone, say to yourself, if you're a teacher, a healer, a counselor, just say to yourself, well, I'm feeling kind of lonely today. First of all, you can allow that to be there. But if you really become challenged with it and you really keep obsessing on it, just ask yourself this. I have 2 buttons. One of them, I will no longer be alone. I'm going to go out and have a normal job in a store somewhere or whatever, and I'll date more so I'm not alone, or I'll continue doing the work that I do. Sometimes I will feel alone, but I can also date here, but sometimes I will feel alone. Which one do you want? Make the choice and live with it. And nothing would ever make me change the choice I'm making. So even if I ever feel those moments of doubt or challenge, wanting out of the spiritual path or wanting to do something different, it's not there for me. There isn't a second button for me to consider. So if I use that analogy of, well, which button would you pick? There is no other button. If I, most of the towns I've lived in my life, people didn't know who I was. Very stealthy, especially before the internet. I could live somewhere and nobody knew who I was. So I could just, let's call it, be myself. But when I come out more and more, being myself and being the teacher is no different. There's no difference in them now. Many, many years ago, I realized this is who I am. It's not what I do. So if you're a teacher, play it safe. Just be a teacher. Talk the spirituality, but nobody needs to expect you to be a nicer person. But me, I can't do that. My conscience won't let me do that. If I'm going to talk about being loving and forgiving, dang it, I have to now be loving and forgiving. And I love it. I love it. I enjoy it. When I say dang it, it's more like being playful and funny about it, because there's just no other way for me. So if I go and retire in 10 years and live in some small provincial town, which I would prefer more than a city, I could just see me. I would never stop being this, even if I'm not teaching professionally. When I lived in the 90s in a town, before internet was big and all that, lived in a town, I was touring and teaching locally, but also nationally and internationally. Since the mid-later 80s, I started doing tours overseas and all that already. But in the 90s, I was living in a kind of a small city. And when I would go to the post office, if I go to a restaurant or whatever, this spiritual person was always there. I never left it at the pulpit or in a book and went and became a different person to people. Always, how can I be helpful? And in a town where they don't know who I am, I love that. Because for me, it's confirmation. This is who I am even when I'm not teaching. Not just when they expect me to be spiritual, but to be that all the time. And that's a really great test of character of spiritual teachers, are they like that all the time? It doesn't mean we don't slip, or I don't slip. Certainly, I've made mistakes here and there, but they're fewer when you practice living the spiritual life. I call it having a God day, and living a spiritual life. It's all of this is supposed to be integrated. You're not supposed to use it.
I love that point.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You're not supposed to just use it only to make money or only to be famous or whatever. So the authors that become famous, they need to be seen as famous authors, not spiritual teachers, because most of them do not live up to the Jesus, the Buddha, the Mother Mary or whatever, ideal kind of concept. They don't live up to it at all. So students, or me as a colleague of theirs, I would be with them and do conferences with them, and I would get confused by, wow, that behavior is so different. I've seen spiritual teachers with drinking problems. I've seen them with being, hypersexual or things like that, promiscuous, And it's not that it's to be judged as evil or bad, just incongruent with what they're teaching. And so what I did as a colleague or friend of theirs, and what I recommended students do, let your mind make a little adjustment, see them as authors that are human, as opposed to spiritual teachers that are more integrated. And one of the first things you said when we started today was that concept of there's the spiritual person, the divine in us, and the human. That's exactly right. But the time is coming and the day is coming and the experience is coming where you're not as much going to see the difference, right? It won't look as different. And that is not that common on this planet at all yet. But the day is coming. All human beings are called to be who they really are. And you can resist that. And all that does is stall and make it a rougher path. It doesn't actually make it easier.
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderfully said. And I love that point, about spiritual teachers, but I also see that a lot with healers too. Like, the level of integrity of a healer. And now that, I'm assisting and forming healers, like there has to be like such self-awareness and self-honesty that, you're able to assess yourself as the observer, as that neutral observer, and really assess, okay, I'm doing this, I'm thinking that, like until we kind of figure out all the places where we are going in different directions in ourselves, in our own personalities, in our own viewpoints, there has to be a huge a deep integration that happens in order for us as healers, as spiritual teachers, as anyone who's providing any service for that matter, to be in the place to actually perform it to the best of your abilities, which for me, that's the standard for a healer. You can't just, do something in a consciousness where you're allowing yourself to even think about doing something wrong. It's more like, and how do we connect with that? For me, the answer is always to connect with God. People are like, well, give me the recipe. Give me, how do you do it? I'm like, be diligent in your practice with God. Sit down with God every day. Like I am with God, like when I wake up in the morning, when I brush my teeth, like everywhere. There's no place where I'm not inviting that connection. So if I'm that connection, then I can become the channel for that to come through me, because it's not even about me. It's about everything that we are and what we are. We're just deciding to bring that love and that consciousness to the other person in order for them to choose if they want to facilitate that healing or not. But the channel needs to be clear in integrity. And that's like the most important thing. And people are like, well, how do I do this and do that? And I'm like, the simplest thing, the shortest way, the shortest path is just you recognizing that God is within you and developing that relationship and that knowing until you actually believe it. Because so many times we don't believe it. We don't dare to believe it.
Right. There are people that don't realize they're spiritual. Then there are people that do realize they're spiritual. But usually what happens is you go from not realizing it to realizing it. Then you start to think and make statements like, about I'm spiritual. I'm a god, goddess. I am this. I am a divine being. Well, have you even communed with God? Well, no, because I am. No. So you're going to go from I'm not very spiritual to I am all that I need to eventually humble. I am as God created me. Whatever goodness is in me is there because God is within me. And so we should start every day in communion with God, not self. I'm a master, I'm a god, I'm a goddess. You are, but you're not going to be a very good one. if you're not plugged into the source of all gods and goddesses. So if I'm coming from the ground up, nothing, no spirituality, to I'm very spiritual and that's enough, you're not going to be as high as you could be if you surrender to God and allow God to help create you into the God goddess you are, help you remember who you really are. So if it's from the ground up, I don't get the heights. I don't reach the heights. The humility has to happen, which is why one of the main reasons we go through the dark night of the soul. It's a stripping away of our old life to humble us so that we can open up to God itself.
Yes. And what a process.
Yeah.
I remember when I was going through it, and it just came to a point where, but back then I saw it as something like really, like I was still judging it like something bad, that, you know, I had to give up all my life and everything that I had, and my, you know, big love in this lifetime, and this and that, and everything that I knew. And now, after integrating that, I remember the other day, I was with my uncle. We were at the ocean, and he cannot swim, and these waves came, and
Wow.
he was kind of drowning. So I was going to him, and I was like, you know, pushing him out. And so I finally pushed him out. I, you know, talked to him and made sure that he went out. But because of me pushing him, I got pulled in back and back into the ocean.
Wow.
And I was very tired. And so I was there in the waves, and and I laughed because it was just as simple as that. I was just there in the waves, and I said, God, if you want me to go right now, I'll go. Just let me know. But if you don't want me to go, please send me some help, because I'm about to drown here.
Wow.
You know? And I just like, I was just there like this waiting, and then some waves started to push me, and you know, I took that push, and then I could finally come out.
Wow.
And everybody was like scared. And I was just happy. I was like, well, it wasn't my time, you know, like it wasn't meant to be.
That's a healthy state of surrender. It's a healthy state of surrender.
Yes. And of course, you know, people were like, you're crazy, or how can you like be so calm? Because, you know, my uncle was like shaking, and I was just like, well, it wasn't the time. But there's like, you know, there are like these layers that we can, yeah, like these veils that we have also from what we're expected to see, how we're expected to react, how, and all of that, the more you are in that connection to God, it's just that God will tell you yes or no.
Right.
and it's so simple. Yeah.
Totally. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, dear. Well, the last question, we're coming to an end of our interview. Is there, you know, I really don't have a question, but is there like anything that you would like to share with our audience? Anything that comes up for you?
Yes, thanks. Probably a few things that I think are important for people to remember. One is that a lot of times when you get on the spiritual path, you feel different. You feel, in a good way, it could be, I feel unique. In another way, it could feel, I feel unseen. Some ways you feel hypersensitive, you know, and that's normal. Most light workers, most, not all, but I would say at least 80%, if not 90, are the whipping posts in their family. They're the black sheep of their family, or they're made into the sponge of the family that's supposed to be absorbing everybody's garbage and toxicity, you know, unfortunately. Because if you're going to be a light worker, chances are you have a more open heart chakra. And all too often, in its divine wisdom and sense of humor, the universe decides to put such people, wow, it's all about love, in a family that's like this.
Yeah.
But why would that happen? Is it because we're supposed to be getting punished? It looks like it sometimes. feels like it sometimes because we're the ones taking all the brunt of the stuff? Or is it because we're the light of hope for that unit, that family, that race, that country, or whatever? So there's a saying by Viktor Frankl, who was an Auschwitz survivor, and he said, if you're going to be a light in this world, like if you're going to be a candle, you better be prepared to burn. You know, and it's not that it's trying to sound fatalistic, but it's true. So please don't take it personally when that is you. Now, that's hard to say when you're in it and it's happening to you. Jabbing and stabbing and backstabbing and oppressing and, oh, you know, it's terrible. And I grew up as a sensitive kid for a male in a very male dominant family. I didn't and wouldn't and couldn't fit in. As a boy, I wished I could fit in, but it wasn't going to happen. And, but I wished because I wanted to feel normal and loved. What I didn't realize is I already am normal, spiritually normal and spiritually loved. But you're not brought up with that. You're brought up only that here's a family, you're a member of the family, and you don't fit in. And it just stays negative. So anybody watching or anybody, you know, that experiences this, or anybody watching that could absorb what I'm saying and share it with other people so we can get the word out there. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm very sorry. I am Michael speaking for all of humanity that we, and God itself is very sorry that you've had to endure that, because it's a very sad thing for people. It's very challenging to be the one taking the brunt. You know how many tortured children are crying and asking for some change, and they don't even know who to pray to because they're not taught that. They might know what it is, but nobody else supports it. You have husbands and wives, you know, telling their children or telling each other, oh, that stuff you believe in, that's crazy. You have religions telling you it's crazy to believe in some of this, you know, spirituality. But more and more encouragement we deserve, and we really should be there for each other and bring that encouragement, because, you know, oh my God, there are musicians that were shamed, so they never followed music. There are spiritual students. There are children that could see auras and told that they're crazy, so they shut it down. This is inappropriate and it's abusive behavior. It's psychic and psychological abuse. But this world does it all the time, so they don't label it that, because it's too inconvenient for the world to realize that they've been abusive. So, you know, be of good courage. Focus on God, because God has nothing to do with this world, in the sense that it's not the cause of this craziness. It's a solution that's a light at the end of a very dark tunnel. We can shorten the length of the tunnel to some degree, in the sense that by being there for each other, time flies when you're having fun. So does the dark tunnel. So we can ease the load for each other. And that's the greatest service we can bring to each other, is being midwives to each other in each other's awakening process. There are days that I might forget this. Having friends hold us up helps me through. There are days when I'm up and you're struggling, and I can be there for you. All of us are in this together. I don't care how far along you are as a teacher. Doesn't matter. Jesus himself reached complete Christ consciousness, and yet he says, I am with you always. He didn't say, hey, I made it. Bye. Sucks to be you. Maybe you guys will get it. Maybe another million years. Good luck. No. Imagine someone going from not only being a Buddha, but a bodhisattva that says, I don't reach enlightenment and leave. I'm going to keep coming back until you're coming home too, because we're one anyway. So that level of love is, you know, right? It's unspeakable. It's beyond human intellectual comprehension. So it's all about this being there for each other, and also integrating another point. It's not, people talk about the feminine, the divine feminine is going to take over now. No, Don't do that. You have to integrate the masculine and feminine together. Where? In politics? No, in yourself. The world can be going crazy, which it always is, but the world can be going crazy. But I can choose to find my own masculine, feminine, God, goddess being and have an alchemical marriage that fuses and integrates these parts of myself. God, I get to be sensitive and intelligent. I get to be prosperous and playful. See, I get to be all of that. And that's not even all the way home yet. On earth, I can experience what's called Eden. Heaven on earth is what we call Eden. We need to go back to Eden, and you will go back to Eden before you go home to heaven. We went heaven, Eden, home, earth, and now we have to go earth, Eden, home. So, from home to Eden to earth, and people got stuck in materialism and density. But we have to bring heaven on earth. That's what the prayers are usually about. On earth as it is in heaven. So how do I start living on earth? Here's what people do. They pray, God, on earth as it is in heaven. Go, come on, make it happen. And God's going, I don't know what you mean. To me, heaven's never been gone. Seems like you're the ones with the problem. So you're the ones that need to heal. Heal the past in the present and release your future. Heal the past. Do your healing work and build a new life in the present. One where you connect every day, start every day with God. And in the present, forgive when things come up from the past. Not just, okay, fine, I forgive, like fake forgiveness. I mean, truly, truly understand. I refuse to hate anybody. I will learn what I need to learn from any experience, and I will see the light in others. That's what forgiveness means. Instead of just words, fine, I forgive you. Do you really? Oh yeah, I forgive you. Do you refuse to hate me? Oh no, I still hate you. Then don't tell me you forgive me. Did you learn anything? I don't need to learn anything. You're the one with the problem. Then you don't know forgiveness. Can you see light in me? Can you affirm that the light of God is in me even if I've been the worst person on the planet? If you can say yes to those three things, you're achieving forgiveness. And that is the only, if there is a shortcut home, the only shortcut is actually forgiveness. And the last thing I would share is this concept, the fixation people sometimes have on romantic relationships. They use, soulmates, my one and only. First of all, if you find a one and only, congratulations, I think it's beautiful. But there are many more that don't find that are tortured because they don't find it. That's not God's will. God wants you to not fall in love, but to rise in love. And not to rise or fall in love with others. Start with yourself. Get a ring. Marry yourself symbolically. I am completely devoted, faithful to me. And the healthier I become, me, the more I can likely attract and create other healthy people. If I'm all wounded and desperate, and where's my one and only, where's the person that's going to never argue with me and support me in everything, and so on and so on and so on. If I have so much neediness, my neediness is going to create only somebody who's very codependent and loves needy people. But if I become healthy, that's why
Yes.
the book on relationships that I wrote is called Creating Fulfilling Relationships. But it says relationships. Why not relationship? Because don't think about one. Think about all relationships have to become holy, forgiven, temples of love and light, all relationships. So I need to have a good relationship with God, myself, and others. And others includes friends, acquaintances, but it includes a partnership too. But everybody wants to skip the relationship with God and self and most others and find one. Well, understand, if this is a totem pole and you skip God and you skip self and you want to find one only down here, you're really way down. Root chakra limited belief systems. You've got to pull all these together. The universe is one. And you think your universe is finding one only person. Oneness means all in one, not one away from all. So to single somebody out, hi, make me feel perfect, tell me I'm wonderful every day. That's what people believe they're looking for. And it doesn't work, and people are suffering because of it. But you can't run away from you. You have to become a better person. And then finding a mate it's like organic now. It's very easy. When I become a better person, I seem lovable, likable, workable, amiable, and I meet other people that are like that, and like attracts like. So I suddenly find myself, yeah. Oh, you're also into forgiveness. Nice. You're also into similar music. That's a relationship that's building. And so relationships have to be built. They have to be created. It's a process, not an event. They have to be nurtured into maturity. So, there are a lot of things going on, and many women are awakening and realizing their healthiness is within themselves, not the old school, you have to be married or you're not a complete woman. If you don't have children, you're not a complete woman. Those are lies. If you don't have a soulmate, you're not a complete person. That's a lie. You are made in the image of God. God can't be incomplete. So you are already complete. All you're really doing is remembering that. But if I try to remember and think I need someone to make me remember, I've already forgotten again. So relationships are such a spiritual and psychological testing ground to see if we're really learning and getting who we are, or if we could just easily get misdirected over to some shiny new thing called a person. And I'm not saying anything about like dissing relationships. I'm saying grow them so that they're as beautiful as possible. But don't think someone makes that in you. Find it in yourself and attract better friends, partners, even family members, even them. You can divorce and walk away from if they're overly hurtful and unhealthy. Keep co-creating with God. Back to where we started as we end. Dark night of the soul, this universe is like a dark night. It tests you and teaches and grow, you grow and you learn, etc. But keep your eye on the light at the end of the tunnel. Don't get too distracted in the side tunnels. Don't get too distracted with the creepy sounds off to the right and left that'll frighten you. Keep your eyes on God and learn what's in front of you, not too many distractions to the side. And that's probably the best advice I can share at the end here.
Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. And I think many, in my audience will appreciate those words. Just to come back really quick on that point of relationship, that's one of the things that I also love to emphasize, in that I remember when I was younger, since I was little, I was always having how can we feel love, these thoughts, how can I feel love for someone but not feel love for the other? How can I, why, do I treat my mother in this way, and then I see a stranger coming and I treat completely different? And of course, we have all different types of relationships. Right. But the more we get to know, I think, our light within, we start to see it in everyone. And so why would I treat someone that I don't know unkindly, or or treat them as they're not even there, or they don't exist? Like many people, you walk by and people are just dismissive, or more, they tend to dismiss more people that are not in relationship directly to them. Right. But for me, all of that builds the quality of relationships that you actually have, because you're saying to the universe, I like this, but I don't like that. And then there are these holes and these places where we're actually projecting our fears, our pain, our many of those things. And all that's doing is mirroring, your lessons.
When I like this kind of person, but not that, it's mirroring my own shortcomings, my own judgments, my own unhealed wounds, my own opinions, and so on. And I might treat my family members with more kindness than strangers, or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we're very combative with family members, and strangers or acquaintances out there. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. So we're so warm and nice. That's all hypocrisy, and it's mirroring to us. Hello, do you see your hypocrisies? Most people don't want to see it. But I tend to be very vigilant with watching myself. And I notice when I do that, if I slip, I bounce back and try to equal it all. Now, that doesn't mean that you treat exactly the same, your partner and a stranger on a street corner that's homeless. It's not that you treat them, it's the love needs to be the same. The kindness, all of that needs to be the same. If I'm willing to forgive a friend more than a partner, I do need to practice forgiveness the same as I would with that one, or if it were the other way around. If I find myself more patient with children and not with adults, I do need to become more patient with adults. This is what I call let your gifts help you deal with your challenges. So if you see that you're extra loving to animals but not humans, try to ask yourself how you can integrate that love you have for animals with some humans. You don't have to do all of them immediately, but can you find any humans that you can bridge with and bring a little of that kindness that you share with animals? It's what life's about. Always learning and healing, learning and healing, learning and healing, until we realize there's nothing left to learn or heal because we're remembering who we really are. It's kind of fun, kind of challenging.
We have everything. We signed up for this adventure.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for your words, for your teachings, for all of the different subjects that we were able to discuss and talk and have all of your insight. I'm so honored.
Thank you. Thank you. And God bless you. I see you as a good soul. Your listeners, your viewers, they'll watch it. They could watch this tomorrow, or it could be 5 years from now that they see this. I believe in you and what you do as a teacher and as a healer, and that's why I'm doing this program with you. I do not do programs. Maybe one every few years I will say yes to, depending on what it is. But for the most part, I haven't done in years, and I don't want to do teleconferences, interviews, podcasts, and almost never, ever do I do anything like that anymore, because a lot of times their programs are supposedly spiritual, but they're more about glitz and not about God. So I don't do them. There's things about them I don't feel comfortable with, or that I see as not right, not quite right and integrated. So I'm saying to you, thank you. I'm happy to do this program with you, and I hope it reaches many people's hearts that you share it with. But I chose to do this with you because I see good light in you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
God bless you. You be well.